Hello to everyone, tere tulemast Eestisse. Welcome to Estonia. Tallinn has many faces. Tallinn has this medieval face with really beautiful small cafes and legends and, well, small corners, small streets. But Tallinn has a lot of cultural history also. We're situated in a little Baltic state called Estonia, just nearby to the Baltic Sea. And this is a really small piece of land. We have here only 1.3 million people.
Estonians lived here already 1,000 years ago, but Tallinn got its name from the Danish occupation. So the Danish people invaded our land about 800 years ago, and local people started calling the town Tallinn. Tallinn means Danish town.
Almost in every corner, Estonian national flag, blue, black and white colors. Blue symbolizes the Estonian sky, beautiful, clear sky. Well, the black color symbolizes the peasant essence of all Estonians, because Estonians have always been peasants here during the centuries. And the white color symbolizes the pureness of the soul and the hope for the better future. A beautiful Russian church called the Church of Alexander Nevsky. That was built in the, let's say, in the last decades of the times of the Russian Empire here. And this Church of Alexander Nevsky, filled with gold and luxury, is the most typical example of Orthodox churches here in Tallinn. On top of the Orthodox churches, we can also see Orthodox cross. Many Orthodox crosses that have their significance. Well, basically crucified Christ, with some of the interesting details, well, some of the lines that cross, let's say, this Orthodox symbol, that the upper line symbolizes the inscription above the Jesus head, then the line that symbolizes his crucified hands, and then there is a diagonal line also that symbolizes two thieves that were crucified on the sides of Jesus. And there is also a half moon, the victory of Russians against the Turkish people.
The Danish people who constructed the church named it Virgin Mary's Church. But then later, hundreds of German families came to live here and constructed their manor houses in the countryside and townhouses all around here in the town. And they started using the church, and they changed the name to the Dome. It used to be a Catholic church, but after the Reformation it became a Lutheran Protestant church. The first thing that attracts your attention are the coats of arms or shields. Those were owned by the same German families who lived here for hundreds of years. Estonians safeguarded those shields during the communist period, and now we have found over 100 of them. And there is a beautiful view to the highest church, St. Olaf's. It was originally constructed about 8 centuries ago, because Tallinn was a completely unknown place. And the town government thought that if it had a very high building, which could be seen from the ships, more merchants would come here. And so they constructed this church, and that's what happened. Tallinn became a busy trade town. You can also see a part of the town wall. So many medieval towns actually destroyed their town walls at one point to let the city grow. But Tallinn luckily didn't. So the wall has survived, and it has about 25 of those little towers, which before were watchtowers and prisons, but now are cafes, museums or art galleries. became a town already almost 800 years ago, when the first town council or government was elected. And the town government took all the decisions here. Here in the square was the town's market. It was a busy place in the Middle Ages. And also in the center of the square, there was a pillar, which was called Shame Pillar. Criminals were handcuffed there. Petty criminals' only punishment was standing handcuffed a certain period of time. And petty crime, for example, was gossiping. More serious criminals first had to stand handcuffed in the center of the square, and the town's residents walked around them and threw things at them and made fun of them, and then they were taken out of town and executed.
Sweet almonds that are roasted with 4 different sugars and 16 different spices. And the recipe is over 600 years old. And that they're really good to health, so they were used to sell in our pharmacies those medieval times.
Now we are walking from the town square to a beautiful little street called the White Bread Passage. In this street were the bakery shops in the Middle Ages. Over 10 of them in this little street. Now there is only one cafe left. This is the smallest house in the entire town, and behind it is a medieval church called the Holy Spirit Church. But in the Middle Ages, it was the place where town councillors prayed. Every single morning they stopped in this church before going to work. And this is an original 700-year-old building, a perfect example of Gothic architecture, very high and slender. In the Middle Ages, people had to belong to organizations which were known as guilds. And the Great Guild was the highest or most prestigious organization. Only wealthy and married and local merchants were allowed to be members of this organization. Now we have come to Pikk Street, P-I-K-K, which means long. In the Middle Ages, this was the longest street in the town and also the main street. It used to go all the way until the harbor. Now the harbor is a little further away. Many streets in the Middle Ages were named after their qualities. Besides the long street, we also have the wide street, the narrow street, the short street, and so on. This is the largest of all of the 25 town wall towers. It used to be a cannon tower. The Queen of Denmark was called Margaret. And when she passed away, the Danish people who constructed the town wall named this tower after her, Fat Margaret. So as you can see, we have changed the values. In the Middle Ages, being fat showed wealth and fertility. Now it's quite the opposite.
like the big metropolis of Europe or of the world, but it's like a small city inside of the forest. And that's why I love it, because I'm an Estonian, and all the Estonians had this pagan religion that we believed into forest, and we believed into natural things, lakes and rivers and so on, that everything had a soul. And I feel this soul is nowadays here present in the capital of Estonia. Peter I created here in Tallinn the new district with his summer residence and dedicated it to his wife, Catherine I, the peasant girl who started soon to be the first lady of Russian Empire. And this beautiful palace is a Baroque-style castle built by a Roman architect called Niccolo Michetti. And in the park there is also a beautiful highlight, a little pond called the Swan Lake. Once it was a preferred resting place for Russian nobles. Nowadays it's a place for summer concerts and of course a preferred picnic place. And why a swan lake? Because it has two black swans swimming on it. Two beautiful symbols of this beautiful district and this beautiful palace.